We know that we must respond to the challenges of climate change. We know that we must be systematic in doing so. We know we must prioritize the vulnerable. But how exactly do we go about it when it comes to the nitty-gritty issue of financing, planning, and budgeting for climate investments? This video will help you understand how Climate Change Financing Framework, or CCFF, helps in exploring the needs and options for financing climate actions and blending top-down policy initiatives with bottom-up approach for prioritization and effective allocation and spending. An increasing amount of domestic and international finance flows are required to address climate adaptation and mitigation goals. Developing countries face the enormous challenges of mobilizing the required financial resources and using them for required climate responses that are aligned with their climate ambitions and the nationally determined contributions. Increasing financial flows requires stronger systems and structures to plan, budget, track, and manage. There are short, medium, and long-term needs that the CCFF can address. Climate finance should address the need to facilitate synergies among climate actions in the midterm and help enhance a country's capacity to further plan and implement climate responses in the longer term. A climate change financing framework, CCFF, is designed to potentially look at the financing gap and financing options for bridging the gap. And secondly, to define a roadmap for integrating climate change in the planning and budgeting system of the country. Countries have the choice of doing a rapid CCFF by picking up on one of the aforementioned areas, or take a comprehensive approach and look at both financing and systemic reforms. The CCFF is a whole-of-government approach that engages all relevant stakeholders to plan for financing climate responses more effectively through prioritizing allocations through the budget cycle at various levels of government. CCFF facilitates integration of climate finance in public financial management systems and improves effectiveness of existing climate finance through reforms to planning and budgeting guidelines and other tools for more informed decision-making, as well as to address institutional weaknesses. Also, a CCFF typically has a roadmap that lays out the reform agenda with a timeline to rectify institutional gaps, coordination mechanism, leadership in overseeing climate finance, sector piloting, capacity building, and monitoring and reporting. What are the steps in developing a CCFF? The steps needed in developing CCFFs depends on the objective of its formulation. Generally, the CCFF formulation begins with a desk review of PFM elements with respect to legislation, institutional arrangement, and operation, to identify rational entry points and risks of implementing reforms. During the review, relevant legislations, planning guidelines, budget circular, and climate policies are reviewed. A general review of fiscal policies, including pricing, taxation, and subsidies, and their role in economic development, is carried out. Tax policies, aid policies, climate change funds, macroeconomic climate change studies are also reviewed. The institutional landscape of climate-related agencies, including planning, regulatory, and oversight institutions, are also mapped along with their roles in planning, executing, and monitoring climate programs. All reforms that have been made or yet to be made are listed to help formulate agenda for further reforms. The review generally focuses on identification of entry points in the budget cycle for improvements in the planning and budgeting process. Stakeholder consultations are done to identify gaps and opportunities to implement reforms. These discussions also help analyze the enabling legal and institutional environment for the required reforms. Different countries have adopted different approaches to develop CCFF to suit their needs. For example, Nepal and Pakistan have focused on PFM system reforms, which defines priority action plans, delegation of institutional responsibilities, and expected timelines. Key recommendations of the Nepal CCFF included revising tagging method to improve budget accuracy, creation of an inter-ministerial coordination committee at Ministry of Finance, increasing Parliament oversight, and climate change budgeting in periodic plan. CCFF in Bangladesh focuses mainly on issues related to fiscal policy vis-à-vis climate change. Nepal, the Philippines, and Pakistan have introduced budget tagging as part of budget reform. Indonesia took a different approach towards CCFF. It developed its mitigation financing framework that not only included recommendations for including climate in public financial management systems, but also identified the mitigation-related needs and expenditures and the subsequent financing gaps. The CCFF helped define scenarios of likely available funding from the budget, international climate funds, and the private sector, and matched these with the range of existing and planned actions, including fiscal policy instruments. A softer version has been done by the Philippines, which helped develop guidelines for budget submission to mainstream climate change in the public financial management process. Because of the CCFF, countries can improve the overall efficiency of public expenditure and promote institutional reforms. In sum, CCFF works in raising awareness on how achieving climate change targets and strategies can promote broader sustainable development goals, and how development gains can be sustained by effectively addressing climate change. Some countries have also moved on to implementing the CCFF. For instance, Bangladesh has implemented several reforms, such as updating its strategic action plan, creating a climate fiscal cell within the Ministry of Finance, and increasing allocation to a climate change trust fund. Indonesia has included an action plan in the planning document for the reduction of greenhouse gases and aligned it with budget units, removed multi-year budgeting constraints, and introduced budget marking scoring. It also publishes the Mitigation Fiscal Framework Report annually. As climate finance flows continue to increase in the years ahead, CCFFs will help build government's capacity to manage climate finance. It will help countries achieve the 2030 Agenda and the NDCs, and, while doing so, gradually move them towards meeting the robust standards and procedures of external climate financiers.